I want to get things rolling by learning a little bit more about you. Tell us about your journey to Theravada Buddhism.
I grew up in Charlotte. I went to Garinger High School. I'm actually living just down the street from Garinger, and my mom's still on the other side of Garinger. I went to school at Chapel Hill and got a poli-sci degree, and then went out to California, intending to work in law firms to become an attorney. I did that for a couple of years. Then I went off to NYU Law School. I got my degree there. I picked up the funniest guy in the law school class, married him, and the two of us moved out to California, got set up in our law practices, and everything was awesome until it wasn't very quickly. My health bottomed out. I didn't understand what was wrong. I went to the swimming pool, went to the Y, and I only did 200 laps. I'm like, weakling, idiot, what's wrong with you? 200 laps. And next time I could only do 50. And the next sometime later after that, I could only do 11. And I felt like I was drowning. I was drowning. I was drowning in fluid coming off cancer into my lungs. I had a huge, massive cancer in the mediastinum. It's called lymphoblastic lymphoma. I don't know if any of you have any medical anythings, but it's almost a form of leukemia. It's the white blood cells proliferating in the lymph nodes, making a huge mass in my chest and nowhere else. So they kept feeling here. They kept feeling that the groin, there's no lymph nodes they can find. So I go through mystery illness for a year of debilitating fatigue. And by the time I landed in the hospital and the doctors finally said, oh, you have lymphoma, I was relieved to get a cancer diagnosis because I was dying of some mysterious something. And I wrote in my journal that I had lymphoma because I had never even heard of lymphoma. Something else happened in that hospital, which is I became a Buddhist. And how that happened is that back when I was hanging out at the public swimming pool, I met a girl from Thailand around my age, and she was working in the Thai restaurant in the day and in the night, and going to school in the day for English. And her swimming wasn't too awesome. I grew up in water, basically. So I started teaching her how to swim, but her English was bad. So I started teaching her English, and we became best buddies. I wasn't working at that point. I'd quit my law job. I thought they had taken away my energy and strength, so I'd quit them. So then through her, I met Buddhist monks from Thailand. They taught me meditation. They taught me a meditation that made my mind peaceful and uplifted, even blissful. And this was a very cranky, judgmental, angry attorney mind that could dig into any issue and find everything wrong with everyone and everything, including myself. So I was basically not all that pleasant to myself and others in many cases. And so to put that cranky mind into a happy state was, oh yeah, signed up for more of that. When they would be teaching Buddhism, I might as well have had earplugs in. I wanted nothing to do with it. I liked their meditation. Forget all that superstitious nonsense. They talked about rebirth. That's nonsense, as far as I knew at that time. Then I landed in the hospital with a cancer. And so in that hospital, I was in and out of intensive care. My parents were called in, didn't think I'm going to make it. Literally, they called my parents from Charlotte out to California, where I was living, because they thought I was going to die imminently. I went through at least 2 near-death experiences, like one really dramatic one. This was not an easy cut and slice cancer. This was catastrophic, absolutely catastrophic. And there was one long night when I couldn't sleep because of the steroids, and I listened to a little music and I looked around for something to do, and I picked up a booklet on Buddhism. At that point, I'd never read anything Buddhist, which might sound strange to you, but this is before the internet. So Buddhist material was not widespread, easily available. All I knew about Buddhism was the occasional quote on a calendar. That was it. And so I picked up a booklet a monk had given me. And for the first time, I actually read something about Buddhism, and I discovered that again, this is Theravada Buddhism. I know nothing of the other schools really. But what the Buddha had done was teach us a course of mental training to overcome suffering. Now, physical suffering is still going to happen, but you don't have to suffer in your mind and your heart over it. So in that book, I read a phrase of the regular people and the wise ones both have illness of the body, so, pain in the body. The difference is the wise do not suffer. And I was suffering horribly. I had a bucket under my arm from my first dose of chemo, having made me, again, deathly ill. And I was just suffering so much physically in that state with this cancer is rather advanced. And to read that there's a way to train the mind so that you don't have to suffer in your heart, in your mind, no matter what happens to your body. Sign me up. So I wrote in my journal one sentence: these Buddhists really know what they're talking about. That is the moment I became a Buddhist. So in college, I had become very disillusioned with Christianity. There's a recessed courtyard where young men would put on suits and wave their Bibles and talk about people going to hell. And I thought that they were, I was horrified by them. I found them really repulsive. And that's when I dropped Christianity totally. I had a huge anti-Christian chip on my shoulder a long time that did not leave until I was Buddhist, firmly Buddhist. And then out of curiosity, read a little bit in the New Testament. I went back and read the New Testament. I'm like, this is beautiful. What did I hate? Wait a minute. This is beautiful. why was I so angry about this? This is gorgeous. So there you go. My journey had to be my journey. So there I am, hating on Christianity, and became an atheist. And when those preachers in the pit, recessed courtyard, would be preaching, a friend of mine who was a socialist and an atheist would put on a red devil costume and dance. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm with that guy. Like, this is it. So I was firmly atheist by the time I left college. Later, I got into some trouble, found a higher power. And that's where I was at. I was never going to return to Christianity, but I had kind of like the generic sort of general sense of, energy of the universe, God, something like that. And that's where I was at when I found Buddhism and embraced it wholeheartedly. That is what really got me through the whole cancer thing. Now, Stanford graduates and scrubs got me through the cancer. But it was Buddhism that kept my mind from breaking during it. So I went through chopped chemo for some months and it failed. So I went through a bone marrow transplant. And then I went through radiation to the chest. And by the time I was done with all of that, I was disabled for a very long time. And the same day I figured out that I could carry groceries up the stairs, my law school sweetheart husband walked out and never came back. And then I was almost homeless, and I was living on my last month's rent. I'd given notice at the shared house where I was renting a room. I was about to move into my car. Man, these side jobs you get in college, you never know what you might fall back on. I had a side job in college helping people in a group home who were severely physically disabled. So I turned back to that and started taking care of people in their homes who were quadriplegic. And I didn't want to go back to law. I didn't have a brain for it anymore. And literally, I mean, there was actually a little injury to my brain from a medical accident. Very briefly, I had to relearn how to read and write, like just very briefly. And then my brain took back over and I was more normal, but there was a hit there. And so I did not return to law, except dabbling in it a little bit here and there. But I was doing in-home caregiving, moved in with this lady who was high quad. She happened to be a few blocks away from Spirit Rock Meditation Center. So I became a regular student and volunteer at Spirit Rock Meditation Center, learned from a whole lot of teachers. And one day, something in my heart just spoke up, like a voice in my head saying that it was time for me to go. And I started looking for a temple or a monastery that would give a woman a chance, because in Theravada, the woman scene was not so great. Almost dropped it at one point because I couldn't take it, but realized that it would be a great shame to let go of the best thing I'd ever come across just because I couldn't get past my own inner pain over the gender discrimination. And I searched around the world to find a place that would give a woman a chance. It ended up landing, of all places, at a monastery and retreat center in West Virginia, Sri Lankan monastery and retreat center in West Virginia. Later, I would end up in Sri Lanka to get my female monk ordination. I became the first Western woman to accomplish this in the country of Sri Lanka. There were about 6 other women in Theravada who got monk level ordination Western women who got monk level ordination ahead of me, about 400 in Sri Lanka, and a handful of Vietnamese. Theravada practitioners ahead of me, but and one Thai. And other than that, of the Western women, only 6, and in various places, like India and Taiwan. And people always ask, why? Why did I want to ordain? The thing is, my brain took a hit during cancer. So the one thing that I thought was like inviolable, infallible, this incredible brain was not the same. That was a shock and a revelation. And then the marriage, gone. Career, gone. Everything was gone. And I'd made a whole lot of friends in my married life out there in California. Gone. They were all scared of cancer afflicting a healthy young woman in such a dramatic way. So, start over. But what's of value when you know you're going to die? I just don't know when I'm going to die. And death seemed so imminent for a long time. Like if I had $50 in my hand, I was unsure what to do with it, whether to buy shoes that I needed or not, because I didn't want to waste it if I'm just going to die in a couple of months. I couldn't leave the house without putting my desk in order, because I didn't know who might have to sort through my stuff if I have some minor thing and never come back from the hospital. That's how imminent death felt to me after all the drama of a very catastrophic cancer. Well, Buddhism talks about death freely, without fear. And when everybody else abandoned me, my new Buddhist friends came closer, because death is interesting. It's a reminder of the truth of the Buddhist teachings. And these people at the restaurants fed me for free. Awesome food. So I was too weak to stand at the stove and cook, but I could get in the car. I could get down the stairs to the car and over to the restaurant, and they'd feed me. These Buddhists were awesome. And they were taking care of me, and the monks were teaching me about old age and sickness and death and impermanence, and just let go. Don't grasp at anything. What is the value of it on your deathbed? So everything, for a long period of time, I've become foolish again, somewhat, but everything for a long time had to be of value to me on my deathbed. I found small talk unbearable, and it would exhaust me. One useless conversation, I could be in bed for a day and a half from exhaustion. But if I talked about aging or death or cancer or blood or guts or disability or things like that, old age with the World War II generation, I was energized. So it was this little biofeedback machine in my energy levels of what was worth doing. And that's why I couldn't do law anymore. Used to be, I enjoyed losing myself in concentration. I remember sitting for 5 hours, not moving, reading a contract and being happy as a clam, just very happy doing that. And there was no way after cancer that I could have done that or would have done that, because the breeze and the sun and the flowers, like, why would you sit for 5 hours reading a contract? No. So my law career was gone. My marriage was gone. All these things I'd invested in were gone. So the only things that I valued were spiritual matters, and anything that would matter from the deathbed, like looking back at it from deathbed, was that of value. The only people I could stand being around were Buddhist and the World War II generation, and people who were severely disabled, because they knew what was true and real. Everybody else was into frivolous stuff. They want to talk about sports and the best restaurants and the clothing and this and that game show. And I'm thinking, your life is short. Why would you do that? It's crazy. And it was such a relief to get the opportunity to ordain, because you don't have to do normal things anymore. Nobody asks you to go to a horror movie. Nobody asks you to babysit. You're on the spiritual track, and you can go be a weirdo, and it's okay. You're expected to be a spiritual weirdo. You can do it.
It sounds to me like you lived through the reality and came face to face with the Four Noble Truths is essentially what you're saying.
Statement. Exactly. The angels couldn't have choreographed it any better to meet the Buddhist monks right when I was going through what I went through.